I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and we have a repeat guest, a rock star, Sarah Lyons from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Sarah, how are you, buddy? How you been?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to see you since we didn't get to see each other last month for our reunion.
It is a pleasure to see you, to be seen. And this is episode 137. Holy cow. So if you don't know Sarah, you've been under a rock or you're new to our podcast audience. Sarah was episode 17. Episode 19, the Working Moms panel was 19, and episode 49. The way that our podcast curation works is that after we get past 100 episodes, it starts dropping episodes off. And so what our podcast producer, Kayla Davis, and I have decided is let's bring back some of the rock stars from the beginning that supported us. And if you haven't ever heard of Sarah, you can definitely check those episodes out, 17, 19, and 49. But you've got to go to our website, Calibrate Real Estate, calibrate.re.com to go get those. But the reason we're having a discussion with Sarah today is not about the past episodes. It's to figure out what a top producer like Sarah is doing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This episode's being recorded after the COVID-19 required shutdowns in a lot of cities and states. And depending on where you are in the United States, you're going to have a different circumstance. But we're running right into the fall where a lot of people are going back to school. And Sarah, you had shared with me as we were prepping for this that one of the major things you're doing right now, and this is tangible, tactical, actionable stuff that a realtor can implement today, is point of service marketing. And I hate to use the word marketing because it's not really marketing, but what you're doing is you're actually reaching out like a live human with a heart and you're connecting with your clients. So let's talk about what your coach is having you do and what point of service means and what some of the things, action steps you're actually doing in the COVID-19 pandemic to really connect with your past clients.
Absolutely. So at the very beginning of COVID, it was very frightening. Just how do you show people you care without putting yourself at risk, putting them at risk? So my coach had challenged me to reach out to people individually. So I did that right back in April, went through, did personal, either like a video, a private Facebook video, Instagram message, text message, whatever main form of communication I had with that person, and asked them how they were feeling. One of the big things is it's not just, hey, do you want to buy a house? Hey, did you lose your job and need to sell? It was, how can I help you? How are you feeling? How are you handling this? Are there any people in your life that are sick that you're needing aid? Financially, are you being affected? And then two, as a homeschooling family already, a lot of people had questions regarding how are you handling your kids at home on a daily basis, because that was a big change for a lot of my clients that normally had their kids in traditional school. And so this month I'm going back through again and checking to see how I can help these people, because they really don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. So that's what I've been focused on.
I love that. And so we're both millennials. I'm like on the very, very edge of the front of the generation. I will say you're a couple years younger than me, but we are part of this 30 under 30 recognition that Realtor Magazine does. And that has sort of dubbed us as kind of the young crowd, if you will, the brat pack. You know, everybody has to be under the age of 30 if you've not heard of that recognition by our national Realtor Magazine. And Sarah, so what I don't like a ton of is, even though I do a ton of video and I obviously do podcasting, is I don't like to use my cell phone for videos that I'm then sending to someone. I don't have Facebook on my phone. And that's actually a trigger for me to stay away from maybe the trap of getting stuck in, looking at cat videos or someone posting what they ate for dinner instead of like really lead generating and really operating my business, because I run a brokerage firm. But I will say that I've had a couple of agents that specialize in residential that they're like, you don't use Facebook Messenger? Are you like, this is like not 1980 here. Like that's what residential agents use. So how does someone, if they're not, and maybe they're just not as familiar with how to market themselves on Facebook, how do you use Facebook Messenger? How do you drop a video in there? What does it look like? Because really, literally, someone who's 37, I don't know. So how does that work?
So first off, it's great that you're trying to avoid the time suck. I also try to avoid the time suck. However, I use apps that my phone already has to restrict that. So I actually go in and I have time blockers on my phone to where if I'm on my phone more than 30 minutes, it will actually pop up a window and it'll tell me you're done. And so that has allowed me to kind of shift how I use Facebook. I'm not able to literally spend an hour looking at cat videos. It makes me focus that time. So mainly I'm focused on finding what they're interested in, what they're posting about, and trying to connect with them on that. And it is easy enough on the instant messenger app because you literally just hit the little video button, take a video, and it's sending it straight to them. And it can be very simple, just doing something above, even on birthdays. Instead of just saying, happy birthday, Mark. Happy birthday, Mark. I hope you have a great day. Send it, because authenticity sells. You don't want to have these professional videos that you're agonizing over all the time. You want to show authenticity. And I think that's why Facebook Live has been such a big market shift in our, just in general on social media. People want to see the potential of an error or of something happening unexpected. They like the authenticity of a live video versus you pre-recording it 87 times and then posting it. And typically my rule of thumb, even if it's not like a Facebook Live, if it is a video I'm sending to someone, if I have to take more than 2 takes, like it's okay for it to not be perfect. Just get it out there.
Yeah, my career coach a long time ago, 10 years ago, when I was working with him, said, done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. And especially because now people are craving authenticity. We've had a few recent guests to the Calibrate Real Estate podcast that have been reality show, Flipping Boston and some of these other things. And they're like, it's anything but reality. And so I think people are craving authenticity. And I agree with you that people like to see that you're human. People want to know that you're not some automatron. Like, I'm dressed in a suit today. I don't dress in a suit every day. But what happens though is, especially with COVID-19, people are like kind of looking at me like, everybody else has been wearing flip-flops, shorts, and yoga pants every single day for the past 5 months. And they're like, you're in a suit. What the heck do you do? So it starts that conversation, and it's authentic because I like to dress up. So I think that you can do authenticity, but also look good as you're doing it. And I agree. If you have to do more than 2 takes, as a podcast host, we do this as one live long stream, and there'll be ums and buts, and we don't sit throughout there and edit all of those out. It's important to say, like, I'm human, I'm going to goof up. Now, if it's something or someone drops a curse word, we try to edit those things out, and don't do that, Sarah. All right, so
thing,
go ahead.
I just wanted to finish the points of bringing aid or just personal connection with clients. So normally during the year, I'm doing pop buys to my clients and bringing them an item of value. My whole company has us go through Brian Buffini's peak producer training at the beginning of joining the company. And while as a millennial, I'm not a big fan of making phone calls, I would much rather connect with people via text or video. The notes and the pop buy portion, I really do believe in. Typically for different seasons, I'll do pop buys to my past clients. Normally that can be something, related to the holiday that's coming up, or something that they may find useful, like sunscreen right as we're going into the summer, or something like that. So I was able to get a hold of a bunch of Clorox wipes right at the beginning of COVID. And so I made it a point to go through a lot of my past clients and bring them what little hand sanitizer I did have, but then also Clorox wipes. And it was amazing how much genuine surprise and joy that brought for me, but then also for the clients, because they're feeling isolated. They're looking, obviously I wasn't coming into their homes, but just, hey, not the Amazon person, like, here's some Clorox wipes. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Can I help you in some way? And just showing them that you really do care about them, and that you're not just trying to, make a real estate transaction happen.
I would imagine with pop buys, and so we're not Popeyes like chicken, but pop buys, like popping by someone's house, you probably interact with, just like I would, a lot of Ring. It doesn't have to be Ring brand, but like Ring doorbells that are video doorbells. And
Yes.
that is, I shared with one of our newer agents, I'm like, if you're nervous and you want to do some prospecting, obviously, you're going to see some people and you might face some rejection. But I have found that when you see someone in person, it's far less rejection than when you're over the phone. Because I've done a lot of cold call canvassing throughout my career. But press that ring doorbell, and if they don't answer, it's like, hey, it's Sarah Lyons. I'm with Century 21, Judge Fight. And guess what? I've got sanitizer. This stuff is like gold right now. And even if you don't see them, like, boom, it's right in their cloud. And what a cool idea.
Well, pretty much everybody was home because everybody's home now. So that part wasn't actually a problem. And I've really never gotten the hang of or never needed to do the cold door knocking. I would much rather go by people that already know, like, and trust me, where they're going to be genuinely happy to see me, versus a person that's like, who are you? Don't sell me something. And so
Yes.
it's a really good way to increase your mood just by popping by a couple past clients that you already know like you, and you're bringing them a little gift and you're making their day.
I agree. It's such a mood booster. And that, I think, is one
Mhm.
of the things that people get a bit of what's called call reluctance or drop by reluctance, where they're like, maybe they won't be home. What if they're in the middle of dinner? And they create all these excuses. They create all this
Mhm.
anxiety that's unnecessary. And what they're missing is, on the other side of that anxiety, on the other side of that closed door, is someone that is going to give you so much life and energy because it's someone you really like. And I think
Mhm.
that's such an important message.
Yeah. And it really doesn't cost very much money. These are trips that are on my route already. So I'm going to be in the area, and it's just a nice little way to break up the day.
All right. So next thing that we want to chat about, which I think this is so cool and so millennial, whether you talk about generational or just, past the 2000s, the millennial generation is about, like, we are changing all sorts of different things, and what used to be done, we are breaking down barriers. There's all sorts of things going on in our world right now where our generation and then the generations younger than us are all saying not anymore. So one of the things that you shared in episodes 17 and 19 is that your family homeschools. And that's not new. There's people that have homeschooled for a long time, but you're the primary income earner, and your husband, Kevin, actually homeschools the kiddos. I find this fascinating because it debunks the typical stereotype of, at least the man is working in the household, and maybe it's a dual income family, but for sure the guy is working. And so I have a couple of stay-at-home dads in my own neighborhood, and I think it's awesome. I'm not sure I could do it. And my wife, Courtney, affirmed that. She's like, I think you would go crazy. But how did that happen? How did that come about? And kudos to you for being like, I've got a great business here, and you can support the family. And I know, as someone who has, for seasons of life, been the primary income earner, I was really nervous about that when Courtney had 3 kids at that point under the age of 2. And she's like, look, our daycare is going to be evaporating my salary. I want to stay at home. And I said, good, I want to support you. And I made more money, actually. It was incredible, the motivation.
Yeah, so I tell clients often that my husband has a harder job than I do, because he really has a lot on his plate. We have 2 very active boys who are now 8 and 10, and he has been homeschooling them for full time for over 6 years. And that all started where, before I got my real estate license, he was in medical school, and I was the stay-at-home parent. And he was pretty miserable the entire time of medical school. It's very stressful. What they do, those medical students and residents and stuff, is quite taxing emotionally on them, the stress level. And so he decided that he just did not want to be a doctor. So we had to come up with our new financial game plan. So at that point, I got a Groupon for real estate classes. Meanwhile, he was taking helicopter pilot classes. He was training to be a helicopter pilot and got his private license and was working on his commercial license. And I started selling real estate and realized really quickly that in order to do what I wanted to do in this business, to be successful, you really need to devote a full-time amount of work to this. This is really not the get rich quick scheme that a lot of people seem to think it is. And so really quickly we decided that the helicopter pilot stuff was going to be a long-term investment that would eventually pay dividends, but realistically, the amount of money I could make now plus what I'm making now is so much farther in excess to what he could have done, that this was a better plan. So we pretty much just completely switched. And at that point I was full-time real estate. He was full-time at home, which can be pretty scary because you have a lot of, responsibility financially on a 100% commission per salary. So having a large nest egg, having debt paid off, and having that financial security personally was a big step, just to make sure that we, have that space to breathe. But he does school 4 days a week with them. We go year round, and so they end up having the same amount of school days as they would had they been in public school. But it also allows us to focus on their specific learning strengths. Both our boys are ADD, both of them are dyslexic, like myself, and so he can tailor their education towards their personalities.
Wow, that's incredible. And kudos to both of you for making that sacrifice. And I will say it's a sacrifice because as we're all bracing to go back into school, and it's going to be different with COVID, but moms around our neighborhood, including my wife Courtney, are like jumping for joy. They're like, it's been a 5-month summer break and we don't know what to do with these kids. And actively, we have all had to learn what online and stay-at-home learning is like, and you guys have been doing it proactively. So really, that's kudos to you. And I agree that being 100% commission and your income, you eat what you kill is kind of the old adage in the business. And that's scary. It's really scary. And I'm glad that you talked about a nest egg, and I'm glad that you talked about getting out of debt. How did you do that? Was there a sequential order of what you did to kind of set yourself up for success as you were really creating a nest egg and an opportunity where you were going to be the primary income earner?
Yes. Yeah. So first off, our schools here are not back. They are in 100% online learning as of yesterday. And so they have at least 6 or 7 weeks locally before they're going to be potentially doing in-person learning. So a lot of the parents here are still struggling because their kids are still home. They did not go back to school today.
Yeah, and that's the case for most school districts in Colorado, except for the school district that our kids happen to go to. So they are the pioneers, if you will, where they're like, we're going. And part of it had, the guinea pigs, pioneers. A lot of it had to do with the fact that the union was actually very supportive of going back. At least that's how it's been communicated, which a lot of unions versus districts have been fighting. And everybody's got a different thought process on it. So yeah, you're right. Depending on where you are, you might be looking at being hunkered down. I think that as we get into the fall here, everyone's going to be like, okay, summer's over and it's going to feel like we're going back into this. And you guys are old pros at that.
Yeah. And so specifically about the financing portion, I did the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University right at the same time as getting my real estate license. And while there are certain things within his program I don't necessarily agree with, for example, no credit cards. I think that if you are able to responsibly use credit cards, it can be a very good avenue for building even more wealth. For example, we got a check yesterday in the mail for $420, and it was straight 2% commission, 2% cash back from our credit card. And so they can be good. But what we first had to focus on was building a small amount of a nest egg to where we had an emergency fund of $1,000 to where if something did come up, we weren't going immediately backwards. Once we had that, then we were focused on restructuring any kind of debts we had. So paying off credit cards, paying off car, and we also had over $135,000 in student loans from my husband's medical school. And because of the timing for his federal loans, it was 6.6% interest rate. Whoa. And so, so that was pretty substantial. And I'm one of those people that I feel angry about debt.
Me too. And that's a mortgage payment.
Yes. Yeah. And so what we were luckily able to do was get his dad to do a balance transfer for like $50,000 to help pay down that. And so then we paid him $1,000 a month, and that helped reduce the overall amount of interest we were paying to be able to attack the other actual loan. But we've completely paid that off 3 years ago. So less than 3 years into selling real estate. So we have, the only debt we currently have is our home mortgage. And we put 20% down, and we actually have it set up to where we will be paying an extra large portion every year to where we'll have it paid off in under 10 years. My goal is
Gosh,
to
that's
have
awesome.
our house completely paid off before I turn 40. That's the plan.
That is so cool. I have paid off Courtney and I, it's not just me, but we have
Yeah.
paid off our house at one point to then turn right back around and get a mortgage on it a year later. And the reason we did that is we did a huge remodel, a 2-story addition on the house that we paid off. And I had my Steve Martin, Father of the Bride Part 2 moment where I'm like, we have this paid off house. I walk in it and the demo guys were done doing demo day, which is like the coolest thing on HGTV. When you are the person who owns the paid for house and it was perfectly usable the day before and it's ripped to shreds, you have a heart attack. And so
Yep.
once that was done, we actually, we did all of our renovation through cash and we did it with no credit cards. And that's just kind of my part of it. I'm not saying credit cards, you know, everybody's got different thoughts about those, but we got to the very, very end, and what happens in real estate construction is a term called scope creep. And our contractor said, hey, by the way, we're going to need a little bit more here. And I, white, you know, I'm like, we're done. Like, we're done with all the cash. We have a paid for house. Like, we've got to find a way. And he's like, it's just not going to happen. So we had to refinance our house. And at that point, we went on a 15-year loan. That was my deal. I said, we want to do a 15-year, let's get it paid off. And Brian Buffini is a big supporter of financing real estate. And he actually has a great podcast that I've shared with multiple people about his viewpoint on how to handle he does not like consumer debt at all, but how to handle real estate debt and which debts to pay off first. And he actually is a big believer in paying off your income property first, because the interest you can get on your home is typically the lowest rate, and it's a very good thing. And so at any rate, that was a little bit of a rabbit hole. We'll get right out of that rabbit hole. One of the ways that Sarah and I know each other, we're buddies. Like I said, we have met each other multiple times, spent time breaking bread in large kind of dinner gatherings. That won't happen this year because of COVID, but we've met through our 30 under 30 accolade. We were 30 under 30s in different years. And the cool thing about that is not only just being in the magazine or being on the cover that goes out to 1.5 or 2 million realtors nationwide. The really cool thing about it is being a part of this elite group. We've got this private group. It happens to be on Facebook. It'll be interesting to see if it'll be on Facebook forever, but right now it's on Facebook. And that we share leads, we share referrals, we share information. And so we're going to talk about two things that Sarah has done that is amazing. And if you're not a 30 under 30, if you're a 30 over 30, as some people like to say, or if you just have no desire to have that, some people just don't care. The point, I don't want you to miss this point, is masterminding with people that are like-minded and that can help you grow. So we're going to talk about two things. First is, last time I saw Sarah, we were at a mastermind in South Carolina, and she knows, and I've shared this openly, that I really work diligently on limiting my drinking alcohol. I actually have a calendar for every single month, and a red X or a pink X as the marker I've got means I had a day where I had a couple of cocktails, and in our business that happens. And then a blue check mark means that was a sober day. And my goal is 20 days or more every month of sobriety. And I'm just kind of an on or off type of guy. I don't know why. Like, some people are like, why do you care? Just have a glass of wine after dinner or whatever, or with dinner. But I just was like, no, I've got to do it this way. And so what I shared with Sarah is I don't drink when I travel. For a bunch of different reasons. That's not always been that way, but I really don't like to drink when I travel. And I certainly don't like to drink when I'm in a business setting, because I want to be clear of mind. And so Sarah had shared with me last time we saw each other in person that her husband, Kevin, had read this book. And this book's called The Naked Mind, and I'll let you describe all of it. But Kevin was really on this journey of health. He just wanted to be in this good mindset of fitness and health. And so what was that like when he read that book, and kind of what was the journey that you then went on together as a couple?
Yeah, so he comes from a long line of family members that have substance abuse issues. And so for him, moderation has never really been a good way for him to live. Whereas I'm a little bit like you in that I can moderate and I have self-control on smaller times. So normally I would only drink if I was out at some type of gathering, but rarely at home. With him, he realized that he needed to just go cold turkey. But AA and different types of programs like that really didn't resonate with him. So he read this book called The Naked Mind, which basically talks about alcohol not being something that's necessary, or alcoholism being not being something wrong with you. It's something that's systemic within our society. And then even more so, it's focused on the chemical composition of what alcohol actually does to our brains. That very first sip of beer that you tried, that maybe your parent let you try as a kid, you thought was disgusting. Even the first couple times as you're getting into adolescences or into like being a young teenager in high school and things, it eventually it gets to where your brain has rewired to like that taste. And that's not normal. I mean, it's essentially a type of poison. That's how you can get alcohol poison.
Coffee, I mean, which I'm sure if you drink enough coffee, you'd buzz out of the room or whatever, but coffee doesn't taste great to people on their first try. I think it's one of those things that acquired taste, right?
Yeah. And do you really need to acquire it? Is it actually bettering your life? It is a depressant. And so really the book talks about that it's a societal thing, that it's in our songs, our movies, our shows. It's in so many things of our society that we're trained to think it's something that we're supposed to have. But so he decided to stop drinking the beginning of last year, the beginning of 2019. And so I decided to support him, because part of that is, if it's in the house and we're drinking it, it's very hard to make a decision not to. And his mom lives with us, and she had quit the year before. So we literally donated the wine glasses, got rid of the wine openers, and just got rid of all of it. And pretty much he had a period last year of starting to try to moderate, and then realizing that moderation was still not going to be key for him. But so it's been over a year and a half since I quit drinking. And it's amazing how you can also learn who your friends are. One of the things that I really respect about the 30 under 30 group is we will be in a nightclub essentially of peers, and there is no pressure of people saying, you should drink with us, so you can have fun with us. It's a very supporting group of adults, which is refreshing. I know that some people, especially through that book, they were saying that some friends are not, they're going to try to make you like them, because by not drinking, you're basically saying that they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. And it's not a reflection on others. It's just your decision.
And it's incredible, because when you and I had that, side conversation, we were in a bar in South Carolina, and you're like, you're not drinking. And you're like, my husband is just, and this was, at that time, just shortly after I just read this book and we're trying this out. And so it's awesome to hear a year and a half later that it's just continued. And we had shared, and if you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you. Please rate, subscribe, do all those things. But you're not probably seeing Sarah. Sarah has been saying that her physical fitness is incredible too, because of all of the different things that are associated with, some of the negatives that alcohol really brings. And what has it done to you? What are some of the positives? Because I agree, that it's funny, as a high schooler, you'd hear about peer pressure and be like, oh, there's no peer pressure. But there really is, especially as an adult. When I've been at a few parties in my neighborhood, not with 30 under 30s, but when in my neighborhood, people are like, you're not drinking. Are you weird? Or like, is there something wrong with you? And so what's some of the positives? Because I think people get hung up on like, I don't want to seem like a weirdo.
Well, one of the things is going to be the cost. I mean, the markup on alcohol is ridiculous, especially when you're traveling. I mean, I am not paying $20 for a cocktail because I'm focused on my long-term finances. I'm focused on my long-term goals. And if you're looking for something that's the flavor, I mean, because I would like a margarita or something that's more sweet. I wasn't ever really just like a beer drinker. And you can do other things that will be less calories, that will be also cheaper. But yeah, so the not drinking part went along with a weight loss goal and weight loss and fitness focused lifestyle, which really people say, oh, what was the magic pill, or what changed? And really it's just that consistency. The not sexy part is how you get sexy. It's the consistency. It's working out 3 to 4 days a week. It's making healthy choices. When you're feeling snackish in the evening, have cherries, have blueberries instead of the ice cream. And for my business, I've found that when I focus on my own self-development and my own growth, my business has also grown. Because one, you have this inner peace, you have more energy. And then also you feel more confident about yourself. I lost over 38 pounds last year. And through COVID, I've still been
Wow.
able, yeah. And it hasn't been just an overnight thing. It's been consistent exercise. It's been watching what I eat. And it's been moderation. I'm not doing keto. I literally, other than alcohol, I did not eliminate a single thing out of my diet. It was just the moderation portion. If I'm having, something fried or having some specialty thing for dinner, then making other mindful choices during that day. So that way my overall calories for the day, my overall macros when it comes to my fats, my proteins, and my carbohydrates is balanced.
Yeah, you bring up so many great points that there's some things I want to land on to make sure that it maybe as people are listening, they're like, I can't do that. I would never be able to do that. And for me, I had 245 sober days last year. Now I try to pick my spots as the way that I communicate. And it was a discussion between Courtney and I, just like with you and Kevin, where I said, look, I think that this is limiting me. And I just want to try it. And I tried it at the end of 2018, and I tried to go cold turkey, and that didn't happen to work for us. But what I will say is that I realized that I needed to keep track of this and needed to be intentional, just like you're intentional about your business. So I was intentional. I kept a tracker. And so in 2019, I had 245 sober days out of the year, which this is really sad and really kind of scary. I think probably since the age of 16 or 17, I don't think I've had that many sober days in my life of if you like really think about it in a year. So that was like kind of scary and also encouraging. And so I just took it day by day, month by month. And some of the things that I learned is that there are triggers. Golfing could be a trigger where, guys are going to go have beers when they golf. So I don't drink when I golf anymore. Happy hour. Real estate conferences, like there are some triggers where you have to kind of be on guard and plan for this. And so I heard you share some things. Like one of the things that I have stocked up on is bubbly and LaCroix and Spindrift and like all these really delicious carbonated beverages, because I can't do tap water. I just can't. I mean, I like tap water, and I don't want to drink Diet Cokes because then that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So you got to stock yourself. If you're going to remove these other things out, you've got to have a plan for it, because you want to have something that helps you celebrate the end of the day, right?
Yeah, you want to set yourself up for success. So whenever we were in South Carolina for our conference, I brought a whole bunch of little peach tea, like Crystal Light packets. And so if I wanted to have something, special while at the bar with everybody else, I was able to just order a water, put that in, and now suddenly I have a flavorful drink. Or like if I go to Sonic or something, I will get a large unsweet tea with mango flavor. And the calorie difference between the large slush that my husband will sometimes get, that's 500 calories or 5 calories for mine. Yes, the slush tastes a little bit better, however, not that much better. So it's finding a healthy medium where it's not, I only drink tap water, but it's also not the other way around either.
It's really interesting. As top performers, I think that this is a really key point to hone in on. And I wish that I could find this. This was long before the term infographic, I think, was even a thing. But when I first started in real estate 15 years ago, I saw what effectively was like a carafe, a picture of a carafe or a pitcher. And what it had was it had lines within it filled with liquid. And what it did was it was trying to attempt to say, in human existence, these are the types of liquids that were available within a chronological order. So at the base, water or coffee or tea, that was the majority of it. And humans have been drinking water, coffee, tea for, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, however long you might be able to figure that out. And I don't know enough about evolution to know exactly what those years were. But then you got pretty far up the craft before you had any introduction of alcohol. Now you might have had beer and mead and whatever, but you got far up there before that was introduced. And then you go all the way up to the very top, very little sliver, it's soda pop, and like that was only introduced, 150 years ago. And basically this health magazine was saying that's the proportion of those types of drinks you really should probably be having, because your body isn't designed to have those things. And I've never been able to find that since I saw that one time. It's so funny.
I really
Kudos
like
to
that
you.
though. That's really, it makes a lot of sense. And typically, I drink a lot of water during the day, lots of LaCroix, and then I typically will drink a super coffee, which is MCT oil infused coffee in the morning. It's, 2 cups of coffee worth of caffeine, but it's 10 grams of protein and a little bit of MCT fat, which is a good, the fat is good for your body. A lot of times people try to eliminate too much from their diet, but really a rounded diet is going to be best long term.
Yeah, and it's interesting that people avoid being fat, right? That's the thing but it creates this inappropriate thing because you actually need fat, and there's
Mhm.
I'm not someone that's properly trained in the medical field or in health, but it makes good sense to me. And obviously, the results are happening when you feel fit and you've dropped, pant sizes or dress sizes. I mean, that's clearly working, and if it's sustainable and it stays off, congratulations, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
even despite COVID, I've been able to sustain it. We have a thing, you guys have it in Denver too, but it's called Camp Gladiator. It's an outdoor fitness club. And I had been part of it for over a year and a half before losing all that weight. So I was basically gaining strength and endurance, but I wasn't losing any weight really until I changed the diet portion. The weight didn't start coming off. But it's been a great opportunity to build relationships. We were fairly new to a new city at that point, so building new friends um, for my business because it is a big online community as well. So whenever COVID hit, they transitioned us from in person or via Zoom. So I do most of my Zoom workouts from my driveway, and I'm able to connect with people via Zoom. And my trainer has no problems spotlighting me, and so that way everybody can see me doing the reps, and he'll let it go longer than I feel like I should probably be able to keep going because I know everybody's watching.
Yeah, I want to say I read, but I actually listened to the audiobook that Tim McGraw did. And Tim McGraw stopped drinking years ago and speaks about this in the audiobook and writes about it in the actual book, Grit and Grace. And it's all about training your mind, training your body, and owning your life. And I think that that's embodied in what you've been doing. And it's just such an amazing journey. So thank you for sharing all those details. One other thing about our 30 Under 30 network, and this could be any mastermind. Let's talk about the other Kyle. There are several Kyles, but the other Kyle Kovatz, and what you have been doing in multifamily investing. That's an area I'm passionate about. We talked about that as we started when we were doing a rehearsal and just kind of catching up with each other. So multifamily investing and commercial real estate, what have you been doing with Kyle, and what are some cool things that are happening?
Yeah, so I sell strictly residential in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I focus on the West Dallas-Fort Worth area, so mainly funky town, so west side of DFW. And what I was really looking for is a way to diversify my investments. I have stuff in the stock market. Eventually, I will start working on single-family residential investment properties, most likely. However, being able to diversify for different markets and also things where I don't really have the time to maintain properties myself when it comes to rentals. And so Kyle Kovatz is a multifamily investor and was a principal on a few different transactions that I was able to participate in. So the realm of multifamily is really exciting because you're limiting your risk in that there are many residents, and your profit margin or your break-even point is typically closer to 80%, but your occupancy is 98%. So that your protection is far greater than if you have a single rent house or a duplex. A lot of times they're focused on the appreciation over time as you rise with all the other ships. But if you have an AC go out or a roof replacement or a month or two of vacancy, your potential profit margin in that annual basis is basically eliminated. With the multifamily, you have a 120 unit or a 200 unit place, you're able to have a lot more margin there for potential error. But then also too, I'm acting as a passive investor. So I basically was able to write a check and then I receive quarterly dividends, and then I'll receive my initial investment plus part of the profit at the end of the transaction. So it's tying up a decent chunk of change in the meantime until it eventually sells. But it's another way to diversify, and these are in other states often. So it's an exciting other option within real estate.
I'm so thankful that you brought up that in multifamily investing, there's two ways to make money. And I've heard Brian Buffini share this. I believe it. And I've shared this with clients that you have to look at multifamily investing as aiming for one or the other target. There's two targets. The first target is appreciation. The second is cash flow. More people talk about cash flow than they do about appreciation. But what happens is if you try to hit both targets at the same time, you're going to miss. It would be like shooting an arrow into a target. And if you try to hit both, you're going to miss. If you aim for appreciation, eventually over time, you'll have a low enough basis that you'll probably get cash flow over time. If you aim for cash flow, you might own it long enough that you get some appreciation, but there are some markets where you can own a property for 10, 20 years and it doesn't go up $1,000 a unit. And it's crazy, but you'll get 7, 8, 9% cash on cash return or 10% or higher. And so I love that you shared that. And I'm sure Kyle has talked that through with all of the investors is that, look, this is a cash flow investment. We may not make any appreciation, but this is what we're doing. Or it's an appreciating investment and the cash flow is going to take a little while because we're going to be, improving it in some way. And that's such an important thing that most people miss because people get greedy and they say, I want both.
Yeah. Well, and what's really interesting right now, because it is such a hot market, it feels like these properties are being turned over in such a fast rate that it makes me concerned about when the bubble will eventually pop. So what I am focused on is long-term debt. So something that it's interest only for 3 years, 5 years, but the long-term note is potentially 12 years. So if the market is still in a good place or is appreciated in the next 3 to 5 years, they can turn around and sell it. We can get our investment back and move on to another property. But if it's not a good landscape, that they're not forced to sell it. A lot of them are trying to do these short-term notes and planning on refinancing. We don't know what interest rates are going to look like or even how the lending landscape is going to look. We saw some interesting things happen with jumbo loans and a lot of bigger loan types whenever COVID hit, and a lot of potential financing streams dried up. So having long-term debt was something that's a priority to me because I want to make sure that I'm going to make a strong investment long-term.
Yeah, great pointers. And everybody's got a different ability to get debt. And we don't talk about that a lot on this podcast. There are other podcasts that dive way deep into it. That's not our show. But I think it's really important to understand whenever you invest in anything, you need to be thinking of one, your investment horizon is a lot of times what people will say. How long are you going to own that investment for? Then item number two, what are your contingency plans? Mike Tyson's famous for saying everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And then all of a sudden the plan goes out the window, right? So that's item number two is you've got, what are your contingency plans? If you've got this investment horizon, you might sell it sooner or later, depending on what happens, because you're really projecting and you're just not sure. And I think that it's really smart, obviously, if you're going to finance any type of real estate, to try to secure good long-term, because rates are so low and I just can't see them being this low at some point. I remember at points in my career, they were 6 or 7%. And we felt like that was good because I was trained by people that started in the industry 5 years before me. And they were sort of my older brothers in the business. And they were used to doing deals and underwriting multifamily at 8 or 9%. Then you talk to someone who was investing in the 70s, they're like, it was 18%, So I think it's important just to understand what your options are and try to create length of time and really understand that it's going to be a long game. Any investment is generally going to be a good deal if it's a long-term hold. And at the same time, if you get some appreciation, you sell it, that makes everybody happy. So thanks for sharing your investment journey in multifamily. It's a subject I'm really passionate about as I've spent the majority of my career in that space. All right, 2 final questions. Now, I already asked you one of them before, but I want to see if the answer changes. So in episode 17, I asked you the Dear Younger Me question, which is from a band called Mercy Me. It's the name of a song, and I have dubbed this the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. So Sarah, if you're able to communicate with your younger self in your 20s, what advice would you give? Or if you're coaching someone, mentoring someone that's just getting into the business and is in their early 20s, what would the advice that you would share with them be?
My advice would be One, focusing on as much education for yourself as humanly possible. There has been a lot of hard knock life, learning going on through all of this time in real estate, but then also to, listening to mentors, going to seminars, doing those things, that I think I didn't spend quite enough time on the front end. It was kind of fail forward, learn as you go. The other thing would be learn your boundaries early and stick to them. One of your past, Isabel, one of your past interviewees, she had a great podcast talking about her Fridays off. And that's something that I really am working towards, building more of that work-life balance on a daily basis. I do a pretty good job of that. I'm at dinner almost every single night. I put my kids to bed every single night. My phone is not allowed to be in the same side of the house during dinner time. It is not on the same side of the house during bedtime. I'm not answering phone calls during workouts. I'm spending evenings now that the weather is, we've moved to a nicer area and we have more walkability now. And so walking in the evenings with my husband most nights before it gets dark, and I don't take my phone with me. And so working on some of those, just kind of life balance. But I really would like to follow Isabel's lead when it comes to actually taking that 24 hours off. Now, granted, if you're 2 weeks in the business, it's a little hard because you already are off because you don't know what you're doing yet, but setting those structures early.
Great advice. I love that. And next question is developed after one of my career coaches, a guy by the name of Chris Oakley, who tragically passed away last year. But when he was interviewed in episode number 5, so he was in our first 5 episodes, so just a little bit before your first episode, episode 17, Chris shared the answer to that question, the Dear Younger Me question. He said that he was part of a mastermind group in his 20s. And it sounded to me like, as he was describing this, there were some older folks involved. And one of the exercises they had to do with all these 20s somethings is they had to read a book called The Principle of the Path by Andy Stanley. And in that book, Andy encourages his readers to write their own obituary. And so this is the topic of legacy. And there's other authors, Stephen Covey is one who said, start with the end in mind. So if you had to write your own obituary, or if one of your best friends, family members was delivering your eulogy at your funeral, what would you hope they would say?
That I was kind and helpful, and that I was not trying to focus on myself versus focusing on helping others improve their lives and helping just them in general. That's normally my goal.
Well, and we had talked at the beginning of our interview a lot about point of service and customer service and reaching back out to clients. And I can tell that that's one of the things that really serves you. You don't have to market when you're just authentic and you're just focused on what makes sense for your clients. I always say that, work with Kyle, he'll go the extra mile, and that's kind of fun because it rhymes. But the reality is, if you're there helping them when they move, if you're there making sure that they've got hand sanitizer and Clorox wipes during a pandemic, if you're there literally as something happens that, I've had clients that have had water in their basement and I'm running into it on the first thing and I'm helping them out. And those are all things that really help create clients that are raving fans. So Sarah, I completely agree.
Sometimes that includes talking your clients out of selling their home. You're like, hey, based on what you're telling me, maybe this isn't, you're doing it for the wrong reason, and maybe taking a step back and not selling your home like we were supposed to is a better play for you. Because really, my goal is to have long-term clients for as long as they're in the area, not just to make a quick sale. And so if you do the right thing, then good things happen.
Yes, gosh. And that is, you have a client for life when you have that discussion of like, hey, by the way, all I do all day long is sell real estate and 100% of my income comes from that. And if I don't sell a house, that means, we're not doing whatever. And then you tell your client, I don't think you should sell your house because I'm listening to you and it's not the right time. They will work with you forever, for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to go to sleep knowing that I did the right thing for that day and that I didn't do something just for my own self, goals. It's for the client's long-term goals.
It's such peace of mind. Sarah Lyons, you've knocked it out of the park. This is so much fun to be able to reconnect with you. like I said, if you want to hear more about Sarah Lyons, you can check out episodes 17, 19, or 49 on our calibrate.re.com website. You can Google Sarah Lyons with Century 21, Judge Fight. Sarah, we are good buddies. It's so awesome to see you here on Zoom. And as I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.